mayors and councillors, directors. Thank you for having me here this afternoon to participate in this meeting. I want to bring a perspective as a provincial legislator, and I wouldn't say I'm a funding partner, but one of 85 MLAs, of course, at the provincial level of government that does budget for and contribute, in this case, to this proposal for infrastructure, sewage treatment infrastructure. And I will admittedly give a different perspective, I think, than you would get from the Environment Minister and from others in government, because I share the concern that I've been hearing from local government, not just here, but across British Columbia, that when it comes to infrastructure partnerships with the province, where the province's role is to be a contributor to capital and a funder for the construction of infrastructure projects that we need, that the province has gone beyond the boundaries of the role as funder to become the author of the terms and conditions of these kinds of infrastructure agreements. Even though, in this case, they will not operate and manage, none of the O&M costs over the next 30 years and beyond will accrue to them or be their responsibility. So what you are facing here, and what I sympathize with in particular, is an arrangement that really is the tail wagging the dog. How many instances can you name where a one-third partner determines the entire scope and details of a complicated agreement like this, where they shape the outcome? And I can recall very distinctly when it came to another piece of regional infrastructure recently, a decision on the inpatient tower for the Royal Jubilee Hospital, where you were so gracious, this board, to provide 40% funding, that there was no such rider or conditions put upon the funding to provide for healthcare services and capital infrastructure for the residents of this region. None at all. In fact, you may want to revisit that decision from the word on the street about how that project is turning out, and in terms of the quality and the scope reduction that has occurred there. But the point was, your $118 million that were coming from regional ratepayers off of their property tax did not come with restrictions or conditions that the province would seek to impose on you on this infrastructure project for an even lower share of contribution. A couple of other observations that I think should be of interest for you, and if you do get into a negotiation with the province about how procurement will proceed and whether you are in fact able to determine the outcome of how that procurement will proceed, would be to look at a project that was recently 100% provincially funded, the Port Mann Bridge, which is not completed, but for years government, under the guise of the same, the guidance rather of the same Crown agency, Partnerships BC, that has inserted itself into this process, determined and eventually agreed to terms for a new bridge over the Fraser that I believe started at a cost estimate of $1.6 billion. Then it became $2.25 billion. Then it became $3 billion. But that was in 2008, the summer of 2008, when the financial deregulation and global meltdown particularly on the private capital markets, had occurred, and that agreement fell apart. And what was interesting was the project was taken off the track in the capital priority list of the province as a P3 designation and became a traditional procurement project.
You have 1 minute, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay.
And what was interesting, and I didn't hear the transportation minister particularly stress this point at the time, but in a 24-hour period from when that decision was made and the P3 agreement was canceled, the cost to the taxpayer became $300 million less. So I'm here to share my empathy with you as decision makers, elected decision makers, as the managers of this utility in the region. I think that local government should be respected as longtime managers of good utilities and services in this region. I think you have the expertise. And I think that the primary decision-making, because the primary responsibility rests with you, should remain with the CRD to be able to determine how the decisions and contours of this infrastructure project proceeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you.